Good morning, you all. Happy Wednesday. Um, yeah, I am going to talk to you today about student loans. We've already talked about it a little bit, but a light bulb went off when I was listening to Dave Ramsey and all the people who call in with their debt. They literally 60, 70, 80% of their debt is student loans. And all of a sudden I was like, bing. So, as I've mentioned before, student loans are subsidized by the government. So, therefore, if a person cannot pay it, if they die, whatever, the government pays the loans. So, what was intended for a good thing for the American people, so Joe Schmoes, people who don't have the finances to be able to go to college, their parents can't pay for it, can't afford it, they can go through the student loans. So, what was intended for good has turned into a deep, dark evil because student loans are the devil. Seriously. It is become, Peter Thiel talks about the student loan crisis being the next bubble. Okay, this is a real problem. And so, as I've been seeing the 60, 70, 80% of people's debt when they call is student loans, like the makeup is always 20, 30,000 in cars, 15,000 in credit cards, maybe a few small medical bills, and like 80,000 student loans, 100,000 student loans. It's like, so what do I want to touch on today? One, go back to the whole strategies of how to not have a student loan. So, what should be happening is the federal government should stop insuring these student loans. And by the way, if they do, money will be harder to access, so prices for schools will go down. So, it will be cheaper. So, one, parents, if you're a parent, you save up to pay for your child's college. And whatever you save up till when they get there, it's what they can afford. If you are in a circumstance like a single mother that, and mind you, what do you have to do to save up for college for your kids? You got to clean up your life and not make a mess of your finances like I have, right? That's what I'm in the middle of right now so that I can have a great financial future for myself, but for my kids as well. The second thing is if you are a person who, even if you've been on a budget and you've worked on getting your income up and you've gotten out of debt, through the course of the 18 years of your child's life. One second. Be careful and don't push her, okay? So, just an example of a single mom per se. The second thing you do, if you can't do number one, if you can't pay for college for your kids, the second thing you do is you guide your kids properly. One, you guide them to cheaper schools. You guide them 100% away from student loans. Do not get a student loan. If you need a student loan to get your education, you can't afford it. You can only afford it if you can pay cash for it. So what happens if your parents don't set you up? What happens if you are a parent and you can't pay for it? Well, there's two things you need to do if you are a parent. You need to guide your kid away from student loans and to the cheapest school possible and to get a job, to work through it and so forth. And the second thing is guide them to sign up for scholarships and grants. So, story of a single mom sat down, this is a true story, sat down with her kid at the beginning of senior year and said, okay, your job is to apply for two student loans. Do not apply for student loans ever. Apply for 2 grants/scholarships per day, Monday through Friday. If you don't do it, then you won't be able to go out on the weekends, whatever, you'll be punished. And, when people look at these scholarships and grants and they see it's just $500, it's just this, it's just that. But a lot of $500 added up, you end up getting enough to go through college. So this was a requirement. the mother sat down and said, I can't afford college. If you want to go to college, this is what you need to do. And by the time she graduated, so of course at the time in senior year, it was like, what a bummer. I can't hang out. I can't, whatever. Bummer that I have to stay and do this or I'm going to get in trouble. But after the fact, when she was graduating, she was so grateful to her mother because she was graduating debt-free with $4,000 in the bank. That is a responsible mommy that told her daughter, look, I can't help you through this, but there's ways, so we're going to find it. And she did, right? And the third thing, which I mentioned in the whole parents guiding, if you're a person who needs to go through school and your parents can't afford it, and, I don't know, you can still try to apply for scholarship or whatever, but you may not have parents' guidance. You didn't have that in your life, right? The third thing is literally just going to a school or taking less classes and cash flowing it, paying for it as you go. But whatever it is, if you have to take out a loan, you can't afford it. You shouldn't go there. So what's the real problem with the federally subsidized loan, and why has it been a curse for us versus a help? There's many problems in it, but the reason why it's a curse or has become a curse is that people can borrow as much as they want, and there's no limits to amounts per degrees. So like, for example, you can go get a $150,000 loan because you chose to go out of state and all these expensive things that make it more expensive. $150,000 loan for a social worker degree that when you get out, you only make 30, 40 grand. You know what it is to get out of school and you have a mortgage payment? That's what $150,000 is. How are you going to get another mortgage payment? And then what do? You defer your loans. So then what happens with deferment? Interest, compounding interest, not in your favor, happens in deferment. Let me tell you what happened to mine. Through the Great Lakes and the subsidized government loans to help me get through which, by the way, University of Miami was not 4, 5, 6 times better than FIU. It wasn't worth the increase in money, the education I got. 100%, I'll tell you. And I could go into more detail in another video, but it wasn't worth it. And if you hear Dave Ramsey, he talks about how that gimmick that the school you went to means something. It's BS. You can go to the cheapest school of whatever. People don't even ask you what schools you went to. That halo effect of Ivy League. Anyway, there's actually statistically, you don't have much more of an advantage by going to a big name school versus not, just so you know. So I got a payout of 25 grand to go to school. That was my principal amount. This is back in 2012 was when I graduated. So by December 2012, Riley, stop. Don't do that. Can you go play with her? She's trying to like lick the floor. Leave this here because I have to throw this away. I'm so sorry for the interruptions. So the payout that I had was 25 grand to school. So by December 2012, January 2013, payments would start. I have deferred and deferred and deferred. I didn't have the money. And what ended up happening was that now my principal balance, because your interest every year rolls into principal and then has interest on that. Now my principal balance is over $32,000. So in 6 years, I have an extra 7 G's I have to pay. 7 G's. 1 second. So here's the interrupter. So yes, my what I owe has now increased $7,000, and I have to pay off 32 grand, which I'm gonna pay this year in Jesus' name. But anyway, I wanted to share all that just to show the inner workings of how it's not for anyone's benefit. How do you come out with a mortgage? How do you buy another mortgage? There are people who have student loans over $1 million, and at the end, they're never going to pay that off. And who pays that? Taxpayers pay that. We pay that. So whatever a person can't afford of their student loans, or die with student loans, which some of these people will, the government pays it off. And that's part of the reason why schools are so expensive now. So first of all, we have to cut off that program, number one. And two, as you're hearing in my videos, we have to take the steps to never, ever, 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 ever take a student loan. Even if you're reasonable, $30,000 for a degree that's going to produce you 30 to 40 grand a year, like social work, and $250 for a medical or dentistry degree that's going to produce you a lot more money. Even if it's reasonable, we have to stay away from student loans like the plague. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. I'm telling you how to do it. I wish I never went into student loans. And look at what I have to pay. But I'm going to pay it off this year. But it's like coming out of school with a noose around your neck, with an anvil hanging off of you. And anyway, this right here. So I'm giving you tips, telling you to stay away from student loans. They are the devil. Flee from him. Flee from Satan. But really, what was the light bulb that went off was that if 80% of everybody's debts that call into Dave Ramsey are student loans, who's the bad guy here? We never consider these schools that charge so much money and tuition keeps going up and gives mediocre education and it's only going down. Because I remember in University of Miami with how they grade on a curve in business school so they could let the dum-dums pass and not fail them. And bring down the scores of the high performers like me because we got to even out the playing field, baby. No thanks. But the point is, nobody ever looks at these schools and the amount of money they charge for tuition and how much it goes up every year. And also the people who loan money, right? Who are literally stealing the money of the American people. But nobody looks at these two culprits as the enemy. But if student loans are taking the lion's share of people's money to go to these expensive schools, who's the enemy? It's just making you think a little bit differently, like the whole credit score is a scam video that you saw, where, as you know, I paid off debt and my credit score went down. So I pay off debt early, which says, hey, if you lend me money, there's a really, really high chance this person will pay you back. She is safe to lend to. That's what it should reflect. No, it reflects you're not going to make a lot of interest on her. You don't want to loan her money. She's responsible with her money. You don't want to loan her money. A credit score is an I love debt score. So I say that to say, if here we are slaves to credit and keeping that right. For what? So we could spend more and make bad decisions that we don't know are bad decisions. And then here we are forcing college, even college you can't afford, because that's the supposed only way to success, versus thinking outside the box and doing it differently. But that's what's been sold to us, and nobody ever looks, just like the credit people, not only the businesses that give credit, we're talking about the credit score, Equifax, TransUnion, all the people being an enemy to us. They are an enemy to us. They don't want our success. That's the same thing. Do the schools want our success? Do the student loan programs want our success? Jordan, excuse me. Or do they just want to make money off of us to any expense of ours? Even if it means a horrible life, even if it means an anvil tied to us. Okay? So literally, what is stealing the American people's money right now, right under our noses, and they have a halo, is academia. Okay? Time to reevaluate this, and time to do away with the federally insured program like yesterday.